the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He went to meet with the Qatari leaders, but he also met with Benjamin Netanyahu, went to some historic sites, and I'm sure had substantive conversations. It looks like Netanyahu did meet with the press and said, I've been invited back to the White House in the last 2 weeks, and any type of friction that may have existed after the hit in Doha doesn't seem to be lingering, at least with President Trump. Did he, in fact, know what was going to happen in Doha, taking a shot at Hamas leadership on the eve of what would have been perhaps, but of course, all the last deals have been falling apart, a hostage deal that would have released about half of them? Yuval David's been working on this his entire life, especially since the October 7th attack. He's a journalist, political activist, an Emmy Award-winning actor, host, director, and filmmaker. Yuval is back in studio. So Yuval, the Doha hit, do you think it was necessary? Some people say it derailed getting some hostages out.
I do think that it absolutely derailed getting hostages out, but I also think that everything that Israel does derails getting hostages out because Hamas tries to find any excuse to not release the hostages. This has been going on since October 7th, 2023. If Hamas really wanted to negotiate and have peace, they would have released all of the hostages immediately. But they're using the hostages, including the bodies of dead hostages, as pawns in some sort of game to continue to ensure that they have power.
And in Doha, they are outraged that they hit inside their country.
What else is Israel supposed to do? Israel should, and I completely support Israel's trying to go after every Hamas leader and eradicating them. Hamas is a threat not just to Israel, but also to Gazans themselves and to the entire Middle East. And as we see Hamas supporters around the world supporting Islamic terror, I think that's wild. We need to eradicate Hamas, and I support Israel's action.
So right now, there's a major operation in Gaza City. They say thousands are being displaced because they got flyers that said, get out, we're going in. So this is going to be, it looks like the end of the operation. They've surrounded the city. That's where the Hamas leadership is. What worries you most about it?
What worries me most is that people think it's going to be the end, but it's not the end. This war seems to have no end in sight. Until Hamas is not eradicated and until every hostage isn't released, how is this war going to end? That is what's frightening. The fact that Israeli soldiers are being wounded and are dying with numbers, it seems like every week in the news in Israel, there's another soldier who 18, 19, 20-year-old who's dying and fighting for his or her country. This is exhausting. The Israeli population is exhausted by this war, and people need to recognize that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's the only country in the Middle East that has freedom of religion, that has free expression, that allows people to run for office or protest against the government. Israel wants to just have a normal life in a democracy like we have here. That is what exhausts me. And then, of course, there are innocent people in Gaza who are also being targeted and are also being killed. I don't want to see anybody die. The ones I do want to see die are Hamas.
And they're probably all holed up in Gaza City. A lot of times they go into hospitals and schools. That's the problem with targeting them. Hannah Einbinder, somebody who won an Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress. And What Is With Hacks is the series that she's in. So she wins an award and uses her great moment to say this.
I just want to say, finally, go Birds, and Free Palestine. Thank you.
Right. That was F-ICE and Free Palestine. And then she doubled and tripled down on it. She says as a Jewish person, it's incumbent on her to speak up.
Sure. As a Jewish person, it's incumbent on her to speak up because Jewish people and Jewish tradition and faith, we are supposed to care about civil rights, social justice, and human rights. But what she does is, in the name of her Jewish identity, she practices performative politics and spreads misinformation where she says that it's perfectly acceptable for her as a Jew to be against Israel, to be anti-Zionist. In Judaism, every Shabbat, every Friday night, we have prayers about the land. We have prayers about our indigeneity. Every Jewish holiday has prayers and information that we share and stories that we share about the land and about our indigeneity. Every Jewish holiday talks about that. So for her to say that according to her, or as a Jew, as she says, I hate when I hear somebody say as a Jew because I have a feeling that something stupid is going to come out of her mouth. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, she just celebrates this moral posturing as if she is on a platform where she must share something about the world. But what information and education does she have? She's funny. Hacks is a great show. I really think it's a great show. She, as a human being and as a person, I think is a morally reprehensible person.
Well, I certainly don't agree with her. I'll tell you that. I know nothing about her, but Hamas praised you. If Hamas praises your speech, just know you're probably on the wrong side. And the cover of the New York Post 2 days ago, Hamas praised and they put her picture up, but you know what they did? They blurred out her chest. You know why? She was wearing a dress that showed skin. So we're going to praise her while making sure everybody knows if you worship Hamas, don't expect to wear anything like this.
Look, the New York Post quoted me in my statements in that article. I was honored to be quoted in that, as I really try to share truth. I try to spread factual information and combat people who are spreading propaganda. Hannah claims to have friends in Gaza. What about her friends who are Jewish? What about her friends who are conservative? I mean, something that we're seeing is this performative outrage that's coming out of Hollywood only exists for specific people. But where's the outrage when Jewish people, conservatives, or centrists are targeted? Hollywood only condemns hate when it fits their script. And that's a problem. She's sharing an obvious script without information beyond those lines that she shared.
And one person has been strong, not as strong as you, Yuval David, from your community, your former job for now in Hollywood, is Jerry Seinfeld. He's been speaking up, visiting Israel, getting backlash, getting protested. You're protesting the most neutral man in the world. And you're protesting him at comedy clubs, screaming out. Sometimes he's getting pushback, and he doesn't care. Well, he's pushing on. How much does that mean?
I think it means a lot for Jerry Seinfeld to speak up and to use his massive platform and fame to do what is morally correct. And he even talks about the fact that we should have conversations, but where it's appropriate to have a conversation and where it's not. Jerry Seinfeld in his shows makes fun of the people who try to protest him in the middle of his show, saying, oh, yes, of course, this is an exact place where we should have political conversations. He makes fun of them because people think that they need to have the right to interrupt other people in other places in life to talk about politics.
And he said, too, he described the Free Palestine movement as an anti-Semitic and compared it to the Ku Klux Klan. And he did it at Duke University, where his kids went to school, where he was a commencement speaker, and he got protested then, or hisses, and he got it again. But he does not care. He says, I really feel empathy for the Israeli people, and I know he doesn't want to get political, but he does speak when asked about this, but I'm sure he doesn't want to be known for this. He sees some of the backlash that people have gotten in the past. I'll give you an example. It's Alec Baldwin. He takes a position, a left-wing position, but he embarrasses himself because he's uneducated about all this stuff and just screams and loses his temper. But is Seinfeld risking things? He's probably risking maybe his place, or is he so secure like Jon Voight that he could say whatever he wants and no one can touch him?
Well, I think that Jerry Seinfeld is probably much more secure than Jon Voight in terms of his massive wealth and success that he's achieved. But something I noticed with Seinfeld is he was actually very silent about this until his comedy shows started to get interrupted. When it started to affect him in his shows, he then started speaking up. So he wasn't practicing this performative activism within his shows or within his career until people started targeting him. Why would people target Jerry Seinfeld in the name of Gaza, in the name of the Palestinian movement, in the name of Israel? Because Jerry Seinfeld is a Jew? That's exactly why Jerry Seinfeld was targeted and forced into this conversation.
He says, by saying Free Palestine, you're not admitting what you really think. So it's actually compared to the Ku Klux Klan. I'm actually thinking the Klan is actually a little better because they come right out and said, we don't like blacks. We don't like Jews. Okay, that's honest. Why don't you guys be honest? So he's just calling people out, doubling, tripling down, because, he's confident that he's on the right side here, and I think it's great. But they did a recent study among Democrats, and they said, do you support Israel's offensive into Gaza? Only 9% in support. Does that surprise you? When almost 50 to 60% of the votes, the Democratic votes, go to of Jewish Americans go to Democrats.
I think that that's a very big problem when we look at what is happening within the Democratic Party. There are so many Jews in the United States, including myself as a former Democrat, who understood that part of my American Jewish identity included being part of the Democratic Party.
Harry Truman was the one to recognize Israel and he was a Democrat? Is that the reason?
That's the reason. But if you even look back at how the Democratic Party courted Jews to join them, it was back in the late 1930s and early 1940s when the Democratic Party wanted to have more power and they were courting the unions. Well, Jews in America didn't have the same rights and protections in the workplace as other people did, so they joined unions. They even created unions. And when the Democratic Party courted the unions to gain more clout, that's when Jews, quote unquote, historically, and I'm doing air quotes, joined the Democratic Party. So when people say that Jews historically have been part of the Democratic Party, we have to understand why and when. But also we must remember that the Democratic Party was the party of the KKK. The Democratic Party was the party that empowered the teachers, Jim Crow, empowered the teachers union to make sure that there's one specific narrative of Americans and white supremacy across the country. The Democratic Party was the party that supported segregation. So sure, parties can change, things can change, and absolutely they should, but we need to really recognize the Democratic Party for what it is. I had a wake-up call when I recognized far too much posturing and far too much allowance and acceptance of anti-Semitism, especially when it's masked as anti-Israel or anti-Zionism.
I have a sense that they can get through Gaza and get Hamas eradicated from that area. You're going to see the popularity of Israel come back. And I think there'll be people and nations ready to expand the Abraham Accords. It's how it ends. Will be important in what happens after Hamas is no longer ruling there and no longer feared by everyone. Yuval David, thanks so much. Best of luck. What's your next big event? What should people know if they want to follow you or help you out?
Definitely follow me across social media because the hate that I get is insane just for speaking up and speaking my mind. So you can find me all across social media at Yuval David. There aren't that many Yuval Davids out there. And I'm speaking at churches and synagogues across the country, helping empower people to be activists and advocates. It is our civic duty as Americans to try to make this country as best as it can be for us, for our families, for our communities. And my goal is to empower all Americans to do so.
Yuval David, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.